Breaking news headlines are screaming that the Supreme Court just gave Trump free rein to slash the federal workforce and dismantle entire government agencies in an 8-1 decision that even included liberal justices. But those headlines are fundamentally misleading, and understanding what actually happened reveals a crucial lesson about how our legal system handles executive overreach, even when it looks like democracy is losing. The Supreme Court just issued what appears to be a devastating blow to federal workers and government agencies. Major news outlets are reporting that Trump's administration can now move forward with plans to gut the federal workforce and shut down departments that have operated for decades. But here's where legal analysis becomes critical, because what the court actually did is far more nuanced than the panic-inducing headlines suggest. This wasn't a ruling on the merits of Trump's plans. This was a procedural decision about timing and legal process that tells us more about how constitutional challenges work than it does about the ultimate fate of federal agencies. The real story begins with understanding what Trump's administration actually requested. They issued directives to the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, and the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, with a crucial caveat. They want plans to reorganize and reduce the federal workforce, but those plans must be done in accordance with applicable law. That legal qualification isn't meaningless bureaucratic language. It's the foundation of the entire constitutional framework that governs this case. When a trial court judge initially blocked these planning efforts with an injunction, they were essentially stopping the government from even developing proposals. The Supreme Court's 8-1 decision removes that injunction with critical limitations that the headlines completely miss. The most revealing aspect of this ruling isn't the 6-3 conservative majority supporting it. It's that Justices Sotomayor and Kagan, two of the court's most reliable voices for constitutional restraint, joined the majority. That alignment suggests this decision rests on legal principle rather than partisan politics. Justice Sotomayor's concurring statement provides the key to understanding what actually happened. She explicitly acknowledged that the president cannot restructure federal agencies in a manner inconsistent with congressional mandates, but she noted that the current executive orders only direct agencies to plan reorganizations consistent with applicable law. This creates a crucial distinction. The court is allowing planning to proceed, but not implementation that violates existing legal constraints. The 8-1 vote breakdown reveals why this decision isn't the constitutional disaster it initially appears to be. When Justice Sotomayor, one of the court's strongest defenders of institutional checks and balances, joins a decision, it signals that procedural considerations outweigh immediate political concerns. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was the sole dissenter, arguing that these plans should be stopped immediately. But even her dissent doesn't necessarily indicate fundamental disagreement about the ultimate legal constraints. It reflects different views about when courts should intervene in the administrative process. The critical legal principle at stake is called ripeness. Courts generally can't rule on hypothetical future actions until those actions actually occur and cause concrete harm. What the Supreme Court essentially ruled is that planning to potentially violate the law isn't the same as actually violating it. This procedural framework actually preserves important constitutional protections. Federal agencies created by Congress, funded by Congress, and operating under congressional mandates cannot simply be eliminated by executive order. Federal employees have legal rights that protect them from arbitrary termination disguised as performance-based decisions. The court's decision leaves all these protections intact while allowing the legal process to work as designed. Challenges will be heard and decided when actual violations occur, not based on speculation about what might happen.
This case illustrates a fundamental tension in American constitutional law between preventing government overreach and maintaining proper legal procedures. The Supreme Court chose procedural integrity over preemptive intervention, but that choice doesn't eliminate the substantive legal constraints that protect federal workers and agencies. The real test will come when Trump's administration moves from planning to implementation. If they attempt to shut down agencies that Congress has funded and mandated, or fire federal employees without proper legal justification, the court system retains full authority to intervene. Justice Sotomayor's concurrence makes this clear. The plans themselves are not before this court at this stage, and we thus have no occasion to consider whether they can and will be carried out consistent with the constraints of law. The district court remains free to consider those questions in the first instance. This preserves the proper sequence of constitutional challenges while maintaining legal protections that many feared were being eliminated. The administration can plan, but they cannot lawfully implement plans that violate congressional authority or federal employment protections. The broader lesson extends beyond this specific case to how our constitutional system handles executive power. Courts can't preemptively stop every potentially problematic government action, but they retain the authority to intervene when actual violations occur. For federal workers and Americans who depend on government services, this decision isn't a green light for unlimited executive power. It's a reminder that constitutional protections remain in place, even when headlines suggest otherwise. The legal system works best when it follows proper procedures while maintaining substantive protections. This decision preserves both, despite initial appearances to the contrary. What happens next will determine whether Trump's administration respects legal constraints or attempts to push beyond constitutional boundaries, and whether our courts are prepared to enforce the law when those boundaries are crossed. This Supreme Court decision reveals how legal procedures can protect constitutional rights even when headlines suggest disaster. What do you think? Should courts intervene earlier to prevent potential violations? Or does this procedural approach better protect constitutional principles? Share your thoughts on how our legal system should balance prevention with proper process. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay informed about the constitutional challenges that will define the limits of executive power. Your engagement helps us explain the legal decisions that shape American democracy.